Hey guys, my name is Anthony and in today's video I'm going to be talking over WOR round 11 at Austria. So going into this track I thought it was going to be the opposite of Paul Ricard. Basically there I didn't really feel that great in quali, but the race pace was pretty good and I moved up quite a few positions, and in this race I thought I'll do pretty well in quali, but then I didn't know if my race pace was going to be as well. But moving on to the quali laps, as you can see we almost spin the car out, and at this point I was starting to get really frustrated because we just wasn't able to hook the laps up properly. We were making mistakes, going a little bit wide into corners and stuff like that, even though in practice we were doing pretty well. But this is probably the best lap of the session. It's not the fastest lap of the session, but it is the best. So let me quickly talk over it. So coming up to turn 1, you want to brake at the 100 meter board and use as much curb on entry as you can. You want to try and use as much curb going into the corner and on exit as well, just to get the quickest line through. And then you've got turn 2, which is basically flat out, it's not even a corner anymore. So moving on to turn 3, you brake at the 100 meter board. You want to brake on the curb actually, because it gives you a better line into the corner and allows you to carry a little bit more speed, and then try and get traction down as soon as you can. It is pretty difficult to do that at turn 3, but with practice you can do it. And then moving on to turn 4, you want to use all the curb that you can on entry and brake just before the 100 meter board. As you're going downhill you want to brake slightly before it, and then for this corner just brake after the 50 meter board. Try and get the car turned in as quickly as possible and then get the throttle down as quickly as possible, and you basically want to do the same thing for this corner. Try not to run out wide on the exit or else you will invalidate your lap. And then coming up to the final couple of corners now, brake just before the 50 meter board. Try and ride the curb more than what I did there, and then for the final corner, 5th gear, try not to go too wide or else you will invalidate your current lap and your next lap. And we did a 1 minute 3.1. So then moving on to the final lap that we actually did, it was slightly quicker, but it was basically just a fraction of a second quicker, as you are about to see. I think we went 1800ths of a second quicker, so it's not really that much, and we didn't even really move positions anyway, and we start in P6. So moving on to the actual strategies now, I want to go into the actual video that I did before. You're going to be on softer hards. I do believe softer mediums is possible, but you're at a very high risk of a puncture, so that's why I'm not really recommending that strategy. So yeah, that was a video I did on TRL Limitless at Austria, and I said that the softer mediums don't really work around here, it's quite risky. However, they do actually work, and that's the strategy that I went for today. So we've got 5 red lights and away we go. As you can see, Sync Recluse had a pretty bad start. I can't remember why, but there is a reason as to why he had a pretty bad start, and we end up gaining a position, so we're now in P5. And at this point I just wanted to try and get as far up the field as I can, because if I can stick with the DRS of the people who are in front, maybe the first 3 or in this case the first 4, then I can really keep the position and basically let them drag me along, because I wasn't really that sure of my race pace. So my goal was just to try and get past the Ferrari in front of us and maybe move on to Presto, who was ahead of him. And then as we come up to the second half of the lap now, you can see we're already sort of struggling with turn 4 as we locked up going into that corner, and we lost quite a bit of time. I think we're 7 tenths behind Pigeon Munch, and the dirty air is very apparent in sector 2. If you're following another car during the race, you will feel it in sector 2 specifically. Even if you're going through the last couple of corners, you don't really feel it as much as you do going into sector 2, going into those 2 left-handers. It was really difficult going into those left-handers, and as you can see, Kyle retired and we got a safety car on the first lap. So we actually haven't gotten a safety car really much over the past couple of races. So when we got the safety car there, my initial thought was really, please don't let it be one of those races where we just kept getting safety cars, but luckily we didn't. So moving on to when the safety car went in, as usual we get a pretty bad start, and as we come up to turn 1 now, we braked at the 100 meter board as usual, and then coming off the exit, I'm not sure what happened to Mr. Pigeon Munch, but I'm assuming he maybe took too much curb as he was going on the throttle, and he just span out really, and that's pretty much his race over. I don't think he ended up retiring, and that's pretty much his race over at that point. So we gained a position on him when we're now in P4. However, we just couldn't keep up with Presto, who was about 2 seconds ahead. We really couldn't get into the DRS because they were already in a DRS train. And as we come up to lap 9 now, just before we go into the final corner, we go a little bit too wide and we end up getting a 3-second time penalty. And that's pretty much all that happened really in the first stint. But as we come up to lap 14, this is when the tyres were pretty much dead and we were going towards the pits to go for the medium tires. We go into the pits, and this is where I make a huge huge rookie mistake. We go into the pits, we break down, but we're not braking enough, and we end up speeding in the pit lane. And as you can hear in the background, I was very, very frustrated at that. It's probably one of the biggest mistakes you can make, and we ended up getting a 5-second penalty through that. But then moving on to lap 17 now, I didn't want Harv behind me to get past because as you can see, he's on the hard tires. This is a new update that came with the latest update of F1 2020. You can now see if someone else has a penalty, and you can see what tires they're on as well. So he's on the hard tires. I didn't really want him to get past me because obviously he's on the slower compound of tires, and it will be quite a nightmare staying behind him. So sadly we had to pass Gibby, and even though I wanted him to just drag me along in the DRS, I knew the best way to keep Harv behind me was to keep Harv behind Gibby. And I wanted to talk about the subscriptions that we're getting here. This stream did really, really well in terms of the numbers. It's the best stream I've ever done, so thank you guys very much for checking out the channel and just giving the channel a chance. I know a lot of you are pretty new and you don't really know what type of content you're expecting on this channel, but I'm really, really happy that you guys gave it a chance anyway, and I hope that you guys continue to support the channel as we go through the journey of just trying to get better at F1 2020, whether it's, you know, through league racing or whether it's through career mode or whatever it is, just trying to get better, because that's the point of my channel. Just want to try and improve at the game and just try and be as best as we can. But moving on to lap 18 now, as you can see, we're basically on the gearbox of Gibby, and I make the move because again I want to keep Harv behind me, and the best way to do that is to keep a car within my car and his car. Don't know why I struggle to explain that there, but you guys get what I'm saying. If there's a car between me and Harv, then obviously it's going to be easier to keep him behind, and as he's on the harder compound tire, then he's going to be very slow. And then moving on to lap 20 now, this is when we make the move on ERS in front of us. I'm assuming he was on an alternate strategy, and maybe that's why he was a bit slower, because obviously his tires at this point were 20 laps old, so he was probably thinking about going into the pits. And we're behind T-Pie, who I believe has 6 seconds worth of time penalties, so I wanted to get as close to him as possible. And then moving on to lap 28 now, the tires at this point were starting to go, and you're about to see me check them. I think they were at, yeah, they were around about 40, nearly 50%, and I wasn't really sure whether or not they would make it towards the end of the race, but luckily they did, or else the title of this video would have been completely different. But I want to use this sort of segment to talk about consistency, because when there's quite a big gap between you and the car ahead and you and the car behind, it's very easy to just lose concentration when it comes to league racing, because you're by yourself, nothing's really going on, so it's really difficult to keep alert, especially if you're not using any assists like the racing line. So it's very difficult, and in my experiences it's really beneficial to you if you really keep your mind focused at these crucial times, because even though you're racing by yourself, it is so easy to just make a mistake where maybe you go a little bit too wide and you end up spinning out or something. It's so easy to make a mistake when you're by yourself, because you're not really concentrating on what's going on ahead of you, because there's not much going on ahead of you and there's not much going on behind you. So these are the real crucial laps where you need to continue your focus and continue putting in the lap times, because it's really going to benefit you at the end of the race. So as we move on to lap 32 now, and you can see that T-Pie has 12 seconds worth of penalties. So at this point I wanted to try and get in within 4 seconds of him, because I had 8 seconds of penalties. So if I'm in within 4 seconds of him, that means I will finish ahead of him. So that was the goal, and I wanted to try and keep Constant Ryan and Harv behind me as far back as possible, because the tires were really starting to die at this point, and I knew that they were probably going to overtake me. And even if they didn't overtake me, they were still going to finish ahead of me at this point, because they were within 2 seconds of me, and I think Constant Ryan only has 6 seconds worth of time penalties there. So at this point he's going to finish ahead of me, so I was trying to get within 4 seconds to finish ahead of T-Pie. And then coming up to the last lap now, we passed the lapped car here, and this is something I've always been confused about. Whenever you're lapping a car and you're behind them, you end up getting DRS, and I don't really see why. I mean, I'm assuming that happens in real life too, but I don't know. I've never really seen it, so I personally don't know. Maybe you guys can tell me in the comment section. But as you can see, the tires are pretty much dead. They're at 70%, so I was really being careful, and you can see they were still not within 4 seconds of T-Pie. So at this point I knew that we were going to finish in P7, because as you can see, Recluse is behind us on the soft compound of tires, and he's within 2 seconds, I believe, of us, and he's not got any penalties. So I decided to defend the position against Constant Ryan because I really wanted to just finish P5 on track, because I knew that I wouldn't finish P5 because of the rookie mistake that we made going into the pits. If we didn't make that mistake, then I believe we would have finished in 6th, but because we made that mistake, we're going to finish in 7th as AMS Tom ends up winning the race, and we come home at the final corner to finish on track in P5, but sadly due to our penalties we ended up finishing in P7. So that's going to be the end of today's video. Not really a great race in terms of where we started versus where we finished because of the mistakes that we made, but it was a real learning experience, and for the next race, which is what we did on Friday at TSRL, you can really see that I did learn from this race and put all of those stuff that I learned from this race into practice for that one. So I hope that you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to hit the like button and stick around by subscribing to the channel if you're new. On the day that we did this stream, we hit 3,000 subscribers, so thank you guys so much for 3,000 subscribers, and I'll see you guys in the next video.